Welcome to the Bogosity Podcast for Independence Day. That's July 4th to you non-Americans out there, 2011. The podcast whose country is wherever minds are free to think and speak. This is your host, Shane Killian. First, we need to start with a retraction. In the last podcast, I reported that, in 7 subjects, students performed the worst that they had in U.S. history. Unfortunately, the AP release was badly worded, and I misread it. What it was attempting to say was, out of the 7 subjects tested, U.S. history was the subject with the lowest scores. That's what the AP release meant when it said, quote, students performed the worst in U.S. history. That means they did worse in the subject of U.S. history, not that the scores were the lowest they had been throughout U.S. history. Don't these guys have proofreaders? Anyway, apologies from the Bogosity Podcast for this goof, and thanks to Rhiann Townsend for pointing it out. We want to expose those spreading Bogosity, not spread it ourselves. So in that vein, let's expose the news of the bogus. The FDA is supposed to regulate the safety and efficacy of drugs as a service to the people. But so much about it seems to be like trying to cure a headache with decapitation. That's the impression given by a column recently published in Bloomberg, linking FDA policy to a record number of drug shortages. According to a survey by the Institute for Safe Medication Practices, 1 out of 4 respondents stated that these shortages had caused medical errors in the past year, with 1 out of 5 reporting adverse effects on the patients. This is the country of freedom and liberty. No matter how much our government may be intruding economically, stopping us from getting life-saving drugs, or feeding the homeless in the park, or dancing quietly to ourselves, at least we're still safe enough to kiss the person we love without having an authoritarian busybody come down on us. At least, that's what Taylor Campion and Kelsey Culpepper thought when they shared a quick peck on the lips at a Minnesota Twins game. A security guard scolded them for it, saying, "I saw you kissing that girl. You can't do that." Campion said she can kiss whomever she wanted to, and the guard replied, "Well, we don't play grab-ass here." What? This guy can't tell the difference between a peck on the lips and grabbing someone's ass? He thinks a head looks like an ass? Has he had his head up his ass so long he can't tell the difference between the two? With all of the assaults the Supreme Court and state courts have inflicted upon us recently, including eroding our right to be secure in our homes from unwarranted searches, it's nice to finally get a bit of good news. The Supreme Court struck down a California law banning the sale of violent video games to minors as an infringement of the First Amendment. The ruling was 7-2. It seems there's no pseudoscience our government will not stoop to in order to get bogus information from suspected terrorists. We all know about torture, and how it almost never results in reliable information, but it's very good to get people to tell you what you want to hear. The same is true of the polygraph, where a mentalist trick with a high-tech prop can intimidate someone into confessing, even if he didn't do anything wrong to begin with. So-called truth serums are reliable ways of getting nonsensical gobbledygook that you can then interpret however you want. Now the government seems mesmerized by all the flashy colors in a brain scan and think that that is the perfect tool for getting information from suspected terrorists. Now it's time to shove the truth in the face of this week's biggest bogan emitter. Robert Reich was Secretary of Labor under Bill Clinton, and for some stupid reason is a respected commentator on CNBC and MSNBC. He recently posted a completely idiotic video to YouTube attempting to explain what's wrong with the economy. And now it's time to thump the Bible on the head of this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. Pat Robertson, previous recipient of Biggest Bogan Emitter, now excels to the highest dishonor we can bestow upon him with this screed against gay marriage.
I think we need to remember the term sodomy came from a town that was known as Sodom, and Sodom was destroyed by God Almighty, and the thing that they practiced was homosexual activity.